Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of the podcast. My name is Warren Pole, and today on the show, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Mr. Graham Carter. Now, I'm really excited and happy to have Graham on the show. I've followed his journey for some time, and there are so many things that I love about what he's been doing. But if Graham were to start with one thing, he said, I'd like people to realise I'm just an average guy. Now, he says that, and to a degree, that's true. But what this average guy has gone on to do is something else. I mean, last year, Graham undertook the Grand Slam of ultramarathons in the UK. That's 400 milers in the space of 5 months. That is a serious undertaking in anyone's book. But as he said, he was borderline asthmatic at school, never particularly sporty. And it was only when a friend died, unfortunately, very young, early 30s, that Graham was inspired to even start thinking about exercise. I think it was the Great South Run where he began, 2005 then. But from there, that journey took him to the Grand Slam of ultramarathons last year. But that on its own, that's a great starting point. But where that allows us to jump off into, with everything else Graham has done, it's the way that his growth and development through his exploration of himself, his physical limits and his mental limits, through running ultramarathons, running trail, getting in touch with a sense of inner peace, getting in touch with a sense of growth, development, the realization that you're probably stronger than you think you are. Deep down, we probably all are. And then running that, no pun intended, using the word running again there, running all that experience into another project this year, which became a very personal one for him because he lost his job through lockdown. And so had to use what he'd learned through growth, development, and running many miles to try and run a very different kind of race, one that unfortunately I think a lot of people are having to try and run this year, whereby their jobs are maybe not there anymore. How do you pick yourself up? How do you face it? How do you find stability in these stormy seas? As Graham says, he's just an average guy, but he's done a lot of extraordinary things, and he has great humility and a brilliant way of explaining what he's been through. And yeah, I'm just really, really happy to have him on the show here. So look, quite enough from me. Before you check this out, or maybe even afterwards, I think would be better. Whatever you do make sure you get over to 33fuel.com, where you will find the world's greatest natural sports nutrition. That will fuel all of your adventures, your long days, your long nights, whether you want to run faster, get stronger, go longer, cycle further, whatever it may be. Get to 33fuel.com. They've got you covered. But really, what you should be doing most importantly now of all is settling in and enjoying this conversation with Mr. Graham Carter. Thank you so much for joining me on the show. I think one thing there's loads of things that we've talked about that really stood out for me. But to open it up, it was the last time we spoke and you said something to remember, I'm an average guy. I wasn't very good at sport at school, wasn't very sporty, didn't start running until you're in your early 20s. You put together the Grand Slam of 100 milers in the UK last year. But I want to go back to that average guy thing because I think it can be easy for people to think that to have a story worth telling or to inspire yourself or inspire others, you kind of have to have gone through some terrible hardship, lost a limb, nearly died on a mountain, been an alcoholic or whatever. And for those of us who haven't been unfortunate enough to have those things happen to us, you think, well, what does it take? And I love the way I think what you do is inspirational and the way you go about it is, but there's no hideous backstory behind it or anything like that. You're just out there doing things because you want to. It's great.
Yeah, I guess one of the things that sums it up is the Rich Roll phrase that we talked about before, which is progress follows action. And I think that really sums it up for me. I mean, I look back. If I was my 23-year-old self who just started running and decided to lose a bit of timber that I was starting to put on, having not been particularly sporty, and just did like 3 miles. And then fast forward and said, when you're 49 years of age, you're going to run full 100-mile races in 1 year. I would have looked at myself and gone, you're kidding, right? How'd you do that? I mean, to be fair, I thought that last year too while I was doing it. But it's as simple as deciding that you want to make a change and incrementally improving. I'm a big reader. Well, I say I'm a big reader. I've read a lot over the years in fits and starts. One book that really stuck with me recently is a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. And he talks about just taking that one little step that gets you a little bit further. And one of the tricks that he talks about psychologically, which I think is fantastic, and I've shared with people when I used to coach in my previous role, is if you want to get fit, you want to go to the gym, all you need to do is walk in the gym, do 2 minutes, walk out. Do that twice a week, then do it 3 times a week. You'll get to a point where you think, what's the point being there for 2 minutes? You'll start doing it for longer. And I still use that trick myself when I'm going out for a run. Like this morning, I got up, went out for a run just before 6 o'clock, woke up, really didn't want to get up, went back to sleep, planned a longer run, woke up, thought, come on, just get it done. As soon as you start moving, you'll feel better. And even sometimes the first mile or two of a run feels like you're running through treacle. But after that, it gets better. And it is just a question of building momentum over time. And James Clear talks about this concept of marginal gains, and also about how, you get 1% better every day. That adds up a hell of a lot over time.
There's a huge opportunity with those small changes to make big differences. But I think if you have, for people who've been unfortunate enough to really suffer in their lives with, whether it be bereavement, whether it be addiction, whether it be illness, injury, whatever it may be, it's a very stark choice then to either, fight back to life or accept whatever the terrible thing is that's happened. Whereas, fortunately, the majority of people aren't in that situation. What we butt up against is minor discomfort, minor displeasure, minor unhappiness. It doesn't make the idea that you should fight back to be the very best you could be any less important. But it can seem like, well, it's not that bad, so I'll just keep going. How did it pan out for you when you really started to change, both in terms of the sport, the running thread that we'll talk about so much, the ultra marathons and everything else, but you also tied that to a lot of self-development through books, which frankly, you don't have to be on a 6-month course or a yoga retreat in the Himalayas. Books are a pretty good way of doing it, and you can, read them in your time. But how did that process unfold for you, physically and mentally and emotionally, with the books? And what was the catalyst? Where do you think the road began?
I think I'm a naturally curious guy. I think it's so important to be curious in life, to admit that you don't know the answers, and you don't have to know all the answers. There are people out there who can help you and can inspire you. And I can't really pinpoint a specific moment, Warren, or a particular path. I mean, I guess when I finished my degree, I then decided that I was going to become a teacher. I became a teacher. I had to learn a lot as a business teacher of secondary school kids, quickly realizing that I learned that I didn't want to do that, and to sell mortgages and pensions. What a change. And I guess I don't know. I'm not a voracious reader in terms of I normally have 2 or 3 books on the go, and they'll be on the go for quite a while, but then I'll basically kind of devour some over time. I think I just want to learn stuff. I just want to know how different people have approached situations, take any inspiration I can from it. I mean, an example would be last year I listened to the audiobook Endurance about what's the guy's name? I can't remember.
Is that the one about? I forget the author's name as well, but the guy who literally sort of unpicked the nuts and bolts of going beyond where we think our limits are, and
Oh,
demonstrate
absolutely.
the elastic limits of human performance, something like
Oh
that.
no, sorry, that's Endure. That's Alex Hutchinson. This is Endurance. This is about the endurance, the ill-fated voyage in the Arctic. And I can't remember. It's not Scott. It'll come to me in a minute. But there's a very, very famous leader, and it's an absolutely enthralling tale of leadership and what we are capable of when we're up against the odds. And what those guys did in their woolen jumpers in the Arctic is just incredible. And those kind of stories really, certainly in the last few years while I've been getting into the longer distance running, really kind of, I guess, build a bank of kind of perspective for you. And when times are difficult, I think it's really valuable to be able to tap into, as you said, people who've had those really bad experiences, people who've been through awful stuff. I was just listening earlier on to someone talk about Joe Biden. I'm not, massively into politics, and I used to be when I was a youth, but Joe Biden's got an incredibly sad story. He's lost, I think, 2 of his children, early, and he basically was saying that, when he was young, his dad had various issues, and his dad said to him, "Why not me?" And I've heard that from other people before. It's a very kind of stoic philosophy. If it's not me, it's going to be someone else. So why not me? So it's taking those little nuggets from people in not just adversity, but what we are capable of mentally and physically. And for me, as my kind of life has evolved, I've had 3 redundancies in the last 11 years. I've had probably 4 different careers since I left university. All of that kind of bank of stuff that I've built up through curiosity, I think, has been really, really helpful. Plus, some amazing role models like my late father.
Well, you bring up a load of stuff there. I was going to sort of dive deeper into the running first, but as you've brought up the redundancy side of things now, very timely with lockdown
Yeah,
and everything else. There are a lot of people going to be going through this. It would be an easy time to get isolated. It would be an easy time to feel down. If you want to go looking at the news media, then the world is about to end
yeah,
every 5 minutes. It could be easy to get dragged into a rabbit hole like that, particularly as we are being forced into a slightly more isolated sort of life at the moment. But how did you how did you deal with that, and what were the tools you found most helpful for getting you through the lockdown period, the redundancy, and now into your new job?
um, I absolutely cannot divorce it from the running that I've been doing in the last few years. That's been really incremental in mindset and influencing how I approach things. The fact that I've been through it before twice and come out the other side definitely helps. And go back to the first time I was made redundant. I was in a job that I've been working for that company for 12 years. I've done a job for the last 2 years of that, which I absolutely adored. Really, really found my niche. And they decided that they didn't want the role anymore. And you go through, it's the whole change curve thing, a period of mourning and being frustrated, and you can't believe they made that decision, etc., etc. And you get to a point where you think, okay, well, what can I do? What can I do about it? I can rail against the world, but basically I need to focus on what I can do. And I looked at, the fact that I had certain transferable skills. I'd already changed career. once, so I had an opportunity to do that again. And again, tapping into this time round, it's very important for me to remind myself, whenever I needed to, that I was not. It was not a personal decision. It was a decision to remove the role. It wasn't because I'd done a bad job. It wasn't because they didn't like me. It was just actually we've decided to reorganize and that doesn't fit anymore. And the first time I was redundant, they had lots of different opportunities. It was a national bank I used to work for, and they had lots of opportunities for me to stay, and I nearly stayed because I thought it's safe. But I then decided, well, it's not, because if it's not what I want to do, I'm going to say goodbye to a redundancy package, which was quite nice, thank you very much, and maybe hate the job I end up doing. So I decided to find something else. So this time round, it was, again, it's bizarre. The first redundancy, I was in a job I loved. Second redundancy, I was really desperate to get out of that job, but I still didn't necessarily want to be made redundant. And this time round, I actually really loved my job again. So it almost felt like, oh, here we go. So get to a point where you really like something and you feel comfortable, I guess, and the rug's pulled. But that's life. These things happen. Who would have predicted this time last year that we'd all be on Zoom and doing virtual meetings left, right, and centre and working from home? And it's bizarre, but we make of it what we will.
And so you have said you couldn't split, the running from, all the other personal development work you've done over the years. And I saw through, whether it was on LinkedIn, particularly on LinkedIn, but also some of the stuff on Strava, you were getting a lot of miles in, and you were consistently on the offensive in terms of it was always you were moving forward rather than either waiting for something or going back. Now, I'm sure it wasn't like that every minute of every day, but then training isn't that way either. So how did your running and everything else combine to help you through the last 6 months? How have those worked for you?
Running is, for me, running has become, people say you shouldn't wrap your identity up in certain things. We've talked about this before, I am a runner, well, what happens when you can't run anymore? Well, as far as I'm concerned, I'm a runner, and as and when I can't run anymore, I'm still a runner. I've still got those achievements. Excuse me, the little humble brag, that's my little Grand Slam.
Nice. That for anyone not on the video there, that is your Grand Slam belt buckle, right? That's 400 milers in 5 months last year, was it?
Yeah.
That's an achievement.
So it's a bit of a humble brag, sorry, but it is a big thing for me, for sure.
It would be a big thing for most people. That's 400. That's 400 miles of running. You've said 23-year-old you couldn't have worked that out. And there you are with it. And you're right. Does that ever go away? Do you stop being a runner because you haven't done that this week, or where's the point where it should stop? It's a good point. I like that some people do say, don't identify yourself as X or Y, because if you identify as a runner and you're injured, you'll be unhappy. But you take a very contrary approach.
I do, and I think it's just struck me now, really. Let's face it, when we're doing the ultra races, sometimes we're a runner, but actually we're walking slower than other people are walking past us, who are just out for their morning walk. So as and when I'm injured, I go for a walk, and I just consider that I can't run, but I'm walking, I'm still going to the same places I would run. So there you go. I guess going back to the point about the last 6 months, running for me it's a release. It's a mental release. It's a decompression. I always used to run in the evening after work. Since lockdown, I've flipped that completely. I run every morning now, which is great because it sets me up really nicely for the day. But my evenings are kind of strange now because I don't do what I used to do. So sometimes I might do 2 runs in a day, but running is so important for my mental health, I think, in terms of processing stuff, in terms of coming to terms with certain things. I mean, in terms of the redundancy this time around, I'm not afraid to show my emotions as a guy, in touch with my friends, with my feminine side, as they say. I think guys are getting much better at showing that, and certainly I've had some very cathartic moments and very good moments for me mentally while I've been running. So, for example, it sounds bizarre to even talk about it now, but I was out on a long run early on in lockdown. Well, no, I guess it was after I was given the news of redundancy. So it was during lockdown. It was June-ish, and I remember running along and then just kind of reached a point where I think my Bluetooth earphones battery ran out, which is always a frustration. So I ended up deep in my own thoughts, and I remember really kind of coming to terms with, I'm scared of what the future holds. And I actually had a conversation with my dead dad while I was running. And I was talking to him, because that has helped me in the past to process things. And I was kind of talking to him and talking back as if what he would tell me, I know dad, yeah, etc., etc. And actually that was really cathartic. And I got home and I said to my wife, if anyone had run past me on the trail when I was running down, through some amazing woods and trail, and I was talking to myself and there was tears streaming down my eyes, they probably would have thought I was nuts. But I needed it. I needed that release. And it was really powerful. And it was almost at that point I processed it all and kind of told my dad what I was going to do. And yes, I'll be fine, and don't worry, which I knew anyway. And I'd already told myself, but I needed to kind of have that conversation mentally as well as out loud, if that makes sense.
Totally makes sense.
So it really helped me to process it, and just getting out. And this is where, I mean, you saw some of the stuff I did on LinkedIn. I guess after that, I became quite resolute about the whole redundancy thing, and very much flipped that switch and said, right, okay, what can I control? Which is always what we've got to do when we're running. It's raining, whatever. Focus on what you can control. And so I started to think about, okay, what action can I take to move forward? I can update my CV. I can do this. I can do that. And I started to think about other people out there who would be having the same thoughts, and some of whom would not have been through this before. And so I recorded what was going to be a 3-minute video while I was mid-run, which turned into a 15-minute video. And it was just something I thought about when I woke up that morning. It was the R to Y of redundancy, and it was about flipping redundancy on its head, and saying, well, R stands for this and Y stands for this, and thinking about things from a positive perspective. And then I started going out on runs and just randomly talking to myself into my phone like I am right now, with you, of course, this time, and kind of just sharing my story and getting out there and saying the kind of things that I was worried about, the kind of things that were inspiring me. There was one particular moment that stays with me, which was I was running through the local forest here, Stansted Forest, and I was on a gravel track, and I just stopped and turned to the right. Something caught my eye, and there was a deer, and I see deer quite often there, but there was a deer just stood at the side of the trail, plain view, probably 50 feet away, maybe 100 feet away, just casually minding its own business. So I just stopped and stood and watched. Now, 20 years ago, when I started running, I would have been worried about the fact that, should I stop my watch? At that point, if any road runners watching this, I bet you're thinking that. But as a trail runner now, it's just like, I don't care. It's all about the experiences. So I stopped, I stood, I watched that deer, and I just, those moments of kind of being in nature, being out there, just seeing the simplicity of life. And this deer was quite merrily going about its way, not bothered by me at all. I kind of took a lot of comfort from that, And I remember running for the first time after my dad passed away 3 years ago, and seeing a deer actually at that time in somewhere where I not normally see one, and it was just there, and I just stood and watched, and it was almost like a sign. And it feels like I've seen lots of deer on my runs during lockdown, and certainly when I was redundant, and it just seemed to be like it's all going to be all right.
That's beautiful, because I think, I mean, the watch thing. Obviously, I assume you just have paused because you have covered, because you have auto pause on your watch, so you don't have to worry about that. But without being too glib about it, trail running offers a rare opportunity for a freedom in our lives that can be hard to find elsewhere. Um, that even perhaps road running doesn't, because road running will invariably be urban-ish. There will be people around. You may be a little more reserved about letting yourself go in the middle of a difficult moment, talking to yourself, running down. Trail
Yeah.
running, you're out there. It's kind of, there is a certain freedom to it that I don't feel road running offers. That, not that one is better than the other, just that, I don't know. Trail running feels a little more soulful.
It does, for sure. That's a really good way of putting it. Soulful. It nourishes the soul. Absolutely. Being out there, and I was just thinking earlier on, the one thing that I think it keeps bringing people back to these long distance trail runs is that the simplicity of it. I need to get from here to here. I've got X many hours to do it. If I'm going to get there, it's down to me. I don't want to be in the sweeper bus. I don't want to be pulling out and being, carted off to the finish, as I have been once. I need to get there, and it is as simple as, am I eating enough? Am I drinking enough? How's my leg? Do I need to stop to sort that blister out? Do I, oh, have I seen any tape for the last 10 minutes? Am I lost? Whoops. All that kind of stuff. And it just, people have said to me, what do you think about when you're on these really long trail races? And I actually say a lot of the time, nothing. It's almost like your mind is empty. You start with all the normal work and personal and whatever worries you've got, and within a few hours, or probably a few miles, it's just you and the trail. And it's really simple, and it's really challenging, and it is all about you, and it's about how you create your own destiny in that situation. So going back to the redundancy situation, that kind of experience, and having been through that on races and in training as well, it's really powerful to be able to tap into that, in whatever situation you are in life. And certainly redundancy, it's, you look back and you think, how did I run 100 miles? How did I get here? I got to where I am now with my new job because I kept taking action, and I was purposeful every day. I've rambled. I do that a lot, Warren, but
It's
going
not,
back
no. It's not a ramble. We're still on a trail run. We're not rambling yet.
but going back to your point about how I ended up in my new role, I'm absolutely convinced it's because of that moment I had where I started to think about how I could add value to other people through sharing those experiences, because that action started to help me to get out there who I am, to people who didn't know me. And the challenge when you're made redundant is you probably have a brand, if you like, a personal brand within the organization you work for. People know, oh, Graham, he's this guy, he does that, he's a good guy for this. And you have to prove yourself all over again. And that's really challenging and frustrating and annoying and time consuming. But it is what it is. You've got to do it. If you're in a relationship for several years and it goes wrong for some reason, and you have to get back out there, you've got to prove yourself to someone else. You have to do that on the job market voluntarily or involuntarily. Or if you start your own business as you have, you've got to prove to other people that they can trust you and that they should supply you or that they should stock you. Who are you? We know who you are now, very successful. But it's those challenges that you've got to do. So it gave me the opportunity. I think I took the opportunity to be really raw and honest and authentic. It's one of the things I said to my outplacement coach, which my previous employer made available to me. So I had a conversation with her, and in one of the coaching sessions, she said, "What do you want to get out of this?" And I said, I need someone to know who I am quite quickly, or just want people to know what I'm all about. So the authenticity really kind of struck a chord, and I got to a stage where I also thought, you know what, if I'm in interviews or what have you, and people, what I would have done before is told people what I think they want to hear, but now I'm going to tell them what I actually really think, not in a blunt way, not in a kind of Piers Morgan kind of way, but just in a genuine, authentic way. And actually that released me and freed me from any fear I had, because I thought, you know what, going into this interview, if they don't like what I've got to say, they probably wouldn't like the way I do the job. So what have I got to lose? And actually, a lot of people will probably give them very anodyne, dulled down answers. And actually, it might be a great chance to stand out.
And do you think where do you think that confidence to take that position came from? Where would you put the roots of that?
Old age.
We're not there yet.
No, I think maturity is part of it. I mean, they do talk about wisdom of old age and stuff. I'm 49, I'm not old. Yeah, I'm getting there. But I think over time you just become more comfortable in your own skin. And I guess it also came back, Warren, from the concept of job security. There isn't any. People think there is. I'm a very loyal individual. I've only voluntarily left one job in my career, which is when I switched careers from my early days of teaching. So once I'm in, I'm all in, and I'm very loyal, and I'll stick with it. But there's no guarantees. So, I contemplated going self-employed, which is something I would never have thought about, being a very risk-averse kind of guy. But I just thought, do you know what? Let's just see what happens. So, I am where I am, and it's a new challenge. I'm learning stuff every day, which I love. I'm getting an opportunity to refresh skills that I had a few years back, and also use the skills that I've developed in the last few years. And it is a challenge, and we all love a challenge. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity I've been given, which is fantastic. And now I've got the opportunity to prove what I can do.
Well, I think it's a great point you make about on the one hand, when you are in an organization or a peer group or even a sport that you know well and that knows you well, then there's an instant shorthand. People know who you are. And that can make life a lot easier. But at the same time, there's an element of baggage when you have to go out and prove yourself. Okay, you've lost that instant, no one knows sort of 70% of, yep, Graham's this guy or Warren's this guy, he does this, they do that. No one knows that. That's potentially negative. The positive is nobody knows anything. Some of that stuff might have been holding you back. Some you don't even know. But
Exactly. And
flipping it to see it that way, difficult, particularly in the situation.
it is, and it's an opportunity to reinvent, and to, so, I mean, some of that brand or that personal reputation is stuff that you actually didn't really welcome, and it might be some things you've done which have led people to perceive you in a certain way, and you think, actually, do you know what? That's not what I want to be known for. There's a lot of what I want to be known for, but actually, I've got a chance to, they use the phrase "be it till we see it." Actually, I'm going to start off on this foot, which I didn't last time round. So therefore, people will perceive me this way, and therefore I'll start to do it more and more, and then I'll become like that.
Your environment affects you the other way, whereas by being in the situation, okay, you didn't choose to be redundant, but there's a whole blank canvas. You can come back, be whoever you want to be. I think there's also an element of larger organizations, and I never really worked for any until, other than the very earliest part of my career, which is a while ago now. But they always seem to me to have quite long memories, and you could actually potentially progress quicker by moving to other places because people saw you fresh each time. Whereas, I don't know, you could see someone and think, well, oh yeah, they've just started, and actually they've been there 3 years.
Mm.
They're not new at all. But I'm probably going off on a diversion there. I mean, is there anything in there that sort of reflects with your story, do you think?
I think your point about reinvention is the key here. I think it's I mean, I'm a very structured, analytical guy, so to have a blank canvas is quite scary, because it's like, I've used this phrase in previous roles, what I like is freedom within a framework. If I've got kind of an idea of roughly how things are, give me the scope to be creative and do stuff within that kind of environment, but let me have some little edges to kind of tinker with. But to have a completely blank canvas is quite scary. But I kind of just started to think, actually, yeah, it is, but wow, what can you do with that? What are the possibilities? And you can analyze the death out of a blank canvas for sure. So actually, that can play to your strengths.
I think it connects with something else that you said last time we spoke, which I felt really resonated, which is it was your take on the sort of hack way of approaching, whether it be a life hack or a work hack
Yeah.
or a morning routine hack. But I'll not steal your thunder. Where do you stand on the concept of hacks, Graham?
Yeah, I'm a sucker for them, like anyone else. But you clickbait, 15 minutes to do this or what have you. At the end of the day, there's no substitute for hard work. We look for the hack. Runners are a prime example. Oh, I keep getting injured, right? Well, if I do this for like 2 minutes a day, will that mean that I'm all good? Actually, that might be, if you were consistent and you did 5 minutes of stretching every day or 5 minutes of squats every day, that probably would be really good. But like a 5-minute hit session 3 times a week, is that going to help me to lose 3 stone? Come on. I just think it's snake oil. People spend a fortune on stuff that promises the earth, but there's all kinds of little asterisks that say you must also follow a 1,500 calorie diet or whatever it might be. I just think it's big business, but I think it's just it's a triumph of marketing and style over substance. And for me, the biggest difference to my running in the last couple of years, what has been consistency, without a shadow of a doubt. You know, I've never been someone who, well, certainly since I trained for my first marathon, we'll talk about, I'm sure. I've never, since then, I've been fairly consistent, but not as consistent as I am now, for sure. And you've got to put in the hours. And I know, the whole Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours thing is, it's disputed. Is it just a made up number like 10,000 steps a day and all that kind of stuff? But the point is valid in terms of you've got to serve your time. I'm not the best runner I'm ever going to be. I'm convinced. I want to be running in 20 years' time. There's a guy on the Centurion circuit called Ken Fansett, who is an amazing guy. He's in his early 70s. I was talking to him as he left the aid station I was working at on Saturday, and he's done 84 100 milers, and he started when he was in his 40s. Now, don't get me wrong, Ken, I'm not after your record. And he's swift as well. He's really swift. But the point is, I want to be still doing this when I'm in my 70s because of what it gives me, and because I'm a better person because I do it, and because I'm way healthier than I used to be, mentally and physically. And I've lost my train of thought now.
No, but it's that. I think you put it well, that the hack concept is attractive, but you can't get anything out of it. Sure, you can work smarter, you can work better, you can be more efficient, you can avoid distractions, you can compress your training, you can vary the pace, whatever you want to do. But unless you consistently show up and do the work day after day, week after week, layering it on like the skin of an onion, you're not going to do it. It's something we see very commonly in nutrition. And don't worry, I won't go deep on this, but the simple one, right? If you're looking at a low sugar protein bar that says it's healthy, to achieve a low sugar label, it has to be less than 5% sugar legally. An apple is 10%. And that thing is double, triple chocolate, caramel, Rocky Road birthday cake flavor. And it's a lot sweeter than an apple. What do you think is really in it? And deep down, like, people, I'm sure, understand this. They know it's really not any better than a Mars bar. In fact, looking at the ingredients, it's probably worse. But a lot of people, on average, kind of like a quick fix. And that's a quick fix, but it ain't going to work for anybody.
Yeah.
And there's a difference. And I think it's a difference that you exemplify so well. Take the wisdom, take the knowledge, examine the hacks. Sure, get your head turned by the occasional shiny bauble every now and again, but you never stop showing up and doing the work. And that comes right back to your ultramarathon discipline of, I'm the only person who can get me to the finish line. It's true. Okay, there'll be people at aid stations. There'll be, crew, whatever it might be. But the only person who can get that done is you, whether it is finding a new job, whether it is getting out for your run, or taking on a Grand Slam of 400 milers in a year. So I think that brings us pretty full circle on the blend of life and running and achievement, and the fact that hacks are not necessarily the best way forward.
Yeah, I think it's important to keep an open mind, because you never know when there may be some miracle, but there is no silver bullet. There's no silver bullet. You can't just magically do stuff. It's just like in work, in business. You have to put the hours in. And people often look for a shortcut, because let's face it, the first time when I started running, and I was doing the whole run walk, 2-minute run, 3-minute walk kind of thing, couch to 5K, it's really tough. It's really tough. But then you keep putting in the work, and then you can do 3 minutes running and 2 minutes walking, and then you can run 5 minutes. And over time you start to get better, you start to improve. I think that, there's this big movement at the moment, isn't there, to mental health, to be kind to yourself. And I think that people often beat themselves up, and I do it all the time. In my new job, I'm thinking, well, I didn't do that particular task very well. Well, it's the first time I've done that task ever. It's a combination of stuff I've done before, but I set myself high standards. So when I don't meet those, I'm frustrated. But then you start to think, okay, what have I learned from it? One of the first things I did in my current job is to basically live my own advice, which is something I've encouraged managers I've worked with in the past to do, which is, spend some time. I think I picked up this tip from a combination of places. At the end of every work day, I've got a list, and I write down the date. I write down 3 wins I had that day, because we often give ourselves a really hard time. But there's 3 things that went well for me today. It could be as simple as I picked up the phone and made that call that I didn't want to make. I ate that frog. Okay. And then
that
also
being the title of a book for anyone who hadn't read Eat the Frog. Do the
Brian
unpleasant
Tracy,
thing first. Of course, you may not have read the book. You might actually have been eating a frog at your desk, which would have probably...
Not literally. So there, and then also write down 1 learning point. So what's one thing that I've learned in that day? And it could be, I just need to do it, or it could be, actually I've got feedback from someone and that's helped me to be better next time. And that's the kind of thing that I try to do now, so that I can end the day on a positive note, because otherwise we can think, oh, I've got that project I didn't manage to do, or I've got that thing that didn't go so well, or that call didn't go so well, or whatever it might be. But actually seek out stuff that you did well, because you can feed off that reinforcement. And it's not false positives. That sounds terrible in a kind of COVID world, doesn't it? But it's not kidding yourself. It's basically seizing on the things that you actually have done well. And again, it goes back to those incremental gains.
Well, I think it can be, you're right, it can be very easy. It was something I read. It's not an uncommon idea, but if we actually look at our self-talk, you'd never talk to anyone else like that.
Yeah.
And certainly I believe we all do it. I know I do. Certainly sounds like you do. I don't think we're the only 2 people in the world who do it.
Yeah.
And too easy to not celebrate your wins. It's something I first learned through ultra running, as in, take the achievement of what you've done previously to feed what you're doing next. But then I learned I could feed that into other areas of my life. And this is another element of that. Like, no one can take away your Centurion Grand Slam belt buckle. If you want to bring it out again now, we can get another look on that. And people now know it's coming. There it is. That's a beautiful buckle. It's a chunky one. So no one can take that away. And that could be as simple as, no one can take away that phone call that you made, or no one can take away the fact that, okay, I didn't do this right, but I took the opportunity to learn from it. You only do things wrong when you don't take the opportunity to learn from it and continue to make the mistake. That's only when it becomes a mistake in the first place.
Absolutely. And there's this, I think it was a Nelson Mandela quote. I can't remember the full quote, but effectively, win or learn. So it's basically saying we either win or we learn. And I'm always jealous of people who can quote like full scenes or lines from movies. I've never been able to do that. But It's a Wonderful Life, which is probably my favourite film. It's my favourite film ever. But there's quotes have started to resonate with me more over the last few years. And I guess my outlook is very shaped by Stoic philosophy, which we talked about, but also William Shakespeare once said, "Nothing good or bad, only thinking makes it so." And I think that's really powerful. It just is. It's just a fact. And your thoughts are not facts. Your emotions are not facts. They're just feelings. So, it's taking the opportunity to kind of spot what's happening and to reframe it, and to, as you say, what would your friend tell you? I mean, whenever I'm injured as a runner and I know that I shouldn't run, I have to remind myself that if my best mate was asking me, should I run, I would say no. But you start to convince yourself that it's okay.
I can just sneak out. I've only got one leg. My knee doesn't work, but I could probably get a cheeky 10 miles in round the block.
Exactly. It's fine. Don't hurt too much.
Nah. But then there's a line to be drawn sometimes. I think the running through injury is a different sort of a subject, but staying with discomfort, intentional discomfort. And we talked about this before. It was a post that you put up recently, and it was sort of a picture of a dark bit of forest, frankly, because you got up at 5 a.m. to go for a run with the intention of doing something that you didn't really want to do and actively putting yourself in an uncomfortable place. Wondered if you could tell me a little bit more about the idea of sort of not all the time, but just taking the time on occasion to actively seek the thing you don't want to do or go and find the thing you know will make you uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's I guess since I've been on this kind of ultra marathon journey, you have to do these things in training to prepare yourself. So, and when we were talking before, I kind of came to the conclusion that I think I got a little bit soft after I did my first couple of kind of big ultras. So I used to get up when I was training for my first 50 miler 7 years ago. I remember thinking I've got to get in a 25 miler today or whatever. So, and I've got to have some time with the family. So therefore I'm going to have to get up at 4:30, go for a run. So I did that in the dark and, just got on with it. But then a few weeks ago, I was thinking, I really want to do like a 3-hour run, but, I'm going out in the morning and I haven't really got time. And then I thought to myself, what are you talking about, Graham? You don't, just because you've been getting up at 6 o'clock to go for a run doesn't mean you can't get up at 5 or 4:30. So I just thought, well, okay, let me do that. So I forced myself to do that. And actually, it doesn't take a lot, really. It's just, set an alarm, get up. When my alarm goes off, I'll get up, get ready, I'll go. And I specifically chose a particular route to do that I knew I wasn't going to enjoy. It was flat, lots of hard packed gravel. It's a route that I'm going to be running soon on a race, which just seems to go on forever. But I just thought, well, you can't just leave it to race day. You've got to. David Goggins talks about callousing the mind, and kind of like you do the hands and just kind of, getting that experience. And I thought, you know what, I just need to test myself. And actually, I ran that route a couple of years ago, and had a shocker of a run, really terrible run. And I think I just kind of, in the back of my mind, thought, oh no, that's going to happen again. But it didn't. I had a great run. I wouldn't say I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the last couple of miles when I treated myself to a couple of miles through the local woods, after all of that. But I endured it, and it wasn't a joy, but I kind of found myself in a strange kind of Zen-like state for part of it. I think just thinking I'm just getting it done. So there's a phrase that Gary Robbins, who did Barkley Marathon, finished the Barkley Marathons a few years back. He talked about his mantra is don't think, just do. I think that's a great mantra. I've used that in ultras before. How far is it till the next aid station? Or I've got 83 miles to go, my legs hurt, or whatever. Forget it. Where's the next bit of tape? Can I move my legs? Do I need to take a drink?
Just keep doing it. And
I guess mindfulness in ultra running is all about mindfulness, isn't it? In the moment.
it's like you said, there is definitely an element, particularly over I think the time of an ultra and the terrain, and the fact that you will probably spend large chunks of time quite alone, although no one's ever actually far away, where your day-to-day chatter of your mind can simply just drains away, probably drains out your legs. I don't know where it goes, but you're right that over those first couple of hours, have I left the cooker on? What about that project? I haven't finished that email, da 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 da. But then there's this other world between you and the finish line, which is totally different. It does clean the mind. There's definitely a Zen element in there. But you then have to go and find those moments in training. But I like the way that you find the uncomfortable ones too, because they're going to happen in a race. It's raining. I'm not going to go for a run. Well, what are you going to do on race day when it's raining? I think there's probably a parallel with work there as well. There are going to be tough things you don't want to do, but they're all
Yeah.
going to make you stronger. And as long as you keep your direction going in the direction you want to go. I mean, if you had not come to running the way you have, and let's just say that you continued on the path that the 23-year-old Graham Carter was on, and exercise was not really a thing, never became a thing. How different do you think your life might be now? Pure speculation. This, we don't have a crystal ball or a parallel universe, but what do you think the two Grahams might look like now?
I I I really dread to think. Um, I I wouldn't swap it for sure. I really would not. I think it's. Um, I mean, to the schoolboy me who was always last to be picked for any football team, in games, who was always struggling and borderline asthmatic, running around the field and struggling to do 2 laps of the field, would just, I mean, that's still me, and I still kind of pinch myself and think, how do you do what you do? I don't. I probably would have found another outlet, but I think I am the person I am because of particularly the last, without a doubt, the last 7 years in the ultra running scene. The ultra running scene is, for my money, the most welcoming community out there. I've volunteered at more races than I've run. I was volunteering on Saturday, and yeah, I'm often more tired the day after volunteering than I am when I've run the race. I didn't run for 2 or 3 days after my volunteering just because I was so tired. But it's so rewarding, and it's such a great community. You see people along the way who, I've talked some people out of dropping at the aid station. I don't know if they finished or not. I hope they did. I saw other friends and people I've met volunteering and at races who had some great races, some who didn't, but everyone learns something from it, and everyone takes something away from it. And I've yet to meet an ultra runner who wouldn't basically go out of the way to help you with something, advice, guidance, buying a Calippo on a really hot day on the North Downs Way, which is the way it is. Whatever it is, people are just so welcoming, and I'm really happy to be part of that community. And I think it's definitely played a massive part in my outlook. What people are capable of, myself included, is really it's really powerful, and it's inspirational to see people doing stuff that they never thought they would do, and to have done that yourself as well. It's a bit of a pinch yourself moment, but also there's a lot of pride you take from it, but it's that inner strength that you kind of think, where did that come from? And then you start to think, when you're struggling on another race, well, I pulled it out of the bag on that one. It's in there. I've just got to find it.
and the journey continues to keep on finding it. I think that's part of the addiction in possibly any sport, but particularly ultra running. And I would agree with you about the community, but also about the fact that it has to be, as long as you are relatively able-bodied and have some basic ability of movement, it's got to be one of the most accessible, if not the most accessible, out-of-body experiences anyone's ever going to have.
It's a good way of putting it. Yeah, I've not. People talk about hallucinating on 100 milers. I've done it a couple of times, but nothing major. Just on the South Downs, I think I saw what I thought looked like a centurion's helmet, which turned out to be just like a bush, and I saw a lady laying across the top of a fence, which was nothing of the sort. But there you go.
Where
nothing
else
compared to what other people.
Where else are you going to find these things? Graham, thank you so much for a really enjoyable romp through life, work, ultra marathons, human performance, our limits, and everything else. I really love all of the work that you're doing, and thank you for taking the time to share it with us today.
Thanks for asking me along, Warren. I think that just to finish, the thing I really want to stress to people is that it all starts somewhere. And going back to the start of our conversation, don't set limits on what you can achieve. I did it for years, and now I've got some big plans, and I'm questioning myself on whether I can achieve some of these things that I'm still planning, but I don't know until I put myself in the arena and have a go. And sometimes just put yourself in there, just have a go and see what happens. What's the worst that happened? Win or learn.
Don't think, just do, and win or learn. I love that.
That's it.
Graham, really good having you on. Thank you.
Thanks, Warren.
So there you have it, folks. Mr. Graham Carter. Really hope you enjoyed that one as much as I did. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, if you want to connect further with Graham, then do go and check out his blog, which you will find at gcgoesultra.wordpress.com. Alternatively, get him on Instagram at Graham Carter GC. Also, you could check out his Win or Learn YouTube channel, which comprises his lessons from a summer of redundancy. All of the links to those are in the show notes below, as well as the links to 33fuel.com, where you will find the world's greatest natural sports nutrition. We're talking everything you need to fuel your workouts, your ambition, your training, your racing, all of it perfectly natural, totally delicious, and free from any of the chemical nonsense, sweeteners, junk, cheap old crap that's poured into so many other sports nutrition products out there. So if you want the good stuff, get to 33fuel.com. Thanks again for listening. Look forward to seeing you on the next one.